All right, so today we're doing 5-1. And we're going to be using our graphing calculator a lot today. We're going to be solving equations with our graphing calculator. This is a great skill to have for those standardized tests because when you aren't sure how to solve something, you can always use a graph to find it. We're going to talk about 2 different ways that you can solve. Okay, so you guys just read about how when you are graphing a related function, you're going to have f of x equals 0. Okay, and that is going to give you the real zeros of the function, which are the x-intercepts. So remember that we have many different terms for x-intercepts. We can call them solutions, we can call them roots, we can call them zeros, or we can call them x-intercepts. Those are all the same thing. Okay, and what we're going to do for the first part, like it says, f of x is equal to 0. We're going to set the polynomial equal to 0. And then we are going to use our graphing calc to find the zeros, okay, which are x-intercepts. And we've done that before. Do you guys remember what that feature is called on your graphing calculator? Yeah, the zeros. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do in example 1 is we're going to move everything over to one side. We're going to move everything over to one side of the equation. All right, so when you move it over, if there are like terms, combine your like terms. Okay, so you have the plus 3x squared, the minus 1. So now you're going to be left with 0 on the right side. On this side, we're going to combine our like terms. So negative 2 plus 3 is 1. So you have 1x squared. This is going to be plus 3. So when you're doing this on your graphing calculator, you're just going to plug in this equation to your y equals. Okay, so that's what you guys are going to do on your graphing calculator. So you go to your y equals. The 1/3, you can just put in parentheses, x to the 3rd power, okay, plus x squared plus 3 okay, and then if you just go to zoom and then your standard, which is 6, you should be able to see that. I just did division, the division sign. Yeah, to do the fraction. But doesn't make it a fraction. Yeah, you just have it, yeah, you can do that. Do the 1/3. Right? Yeah, with some of your calculators, if you use the alpha to create the fraction, that's going to work too. And then on your graph, you can see you have how many intercepts? 1. So some of them you are going to have more than 1, okay? So this one just has 1 x-intercept. So to go to the trace, we're going to go to second, trace button, because above it says calc, and then we're going to go to 2, which says 0. Okay, so second calc, 2 is the 0, and then remember we try to get it right on it. When it's asking you for the left bound, you have to go beneath the x-axis. For the right bound, you have to go above it for this one. You always have to make sure one is above and one is below. It has to have that sign change. Now, in the directions, it says we have to round this to the nearest what? Yep, so that's how many places? 2. And then when you're looking at your x value, if you're rounding to the second place, you look at the third place, and that tells you whether you're rounding up or whether you're keeping it the same. Okay, and then your solution is going to be your x value, so 3.67. Okay, so I want you to try part B where you're moving everything over and then graphing. And then so we're going to right to then go to the left. Yep, so do a left arrow a few times. Yep, good. Yep. Yep. And this time when you're moving values over, you don't have any like terms. Make sure that you are moving them over appropriately, okay? So you have 8x to the 4th plus 3x cubed minus 4x squared minus x minus 3. If you notice that you are not getting the same answers that we are up here, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is double check your equations, because sometimes there's just a very small error on what you're typing in, and then that can cause you to be a little bit off. So make sure when you're moving it over, you're subtracting the 3, that you have the proper signs. And now that you're in the standard window, when you graph, you should be able to see your x-intercepts. And you do have 2 of them this time. Yeah, so anytime you're doing your bounds, remember, you have to have one above the axis, one bound above, one bound below. Okay, or else you're going to get an error. So one thing I do is I try, when I'm doing my 0, I try to get right on my 0. So let's try to get right on it. Now when it says left bound, I'm just going to press the left key twice, or really this time I only need to once. Press enter, let's go back to the center, and then just arrow once to the right. Enter, and then I like to go back to the center. You technically don't have to. And then see how your 0 is -1 e to the -12? We talked about how that's scientific notation, and that's going to round to what? Yeah, 0. Okay. So for this one, you should round to -1.06. Okay, and then we're going to do the second one as well. So will you guys try that if you're having trouble with the first one? So again, I like to try to get as close as possible and then go 1 or 2 to the left. And then 1 or 2 to the right, and then I try to get right on it. And this one rounds to 0.89. All right, now the other way we're going to solve is we're going to do some applications with story problems. So read through the story problem, but then I also want you to read through parts A, B, and C so you know what our objectives are. What are we trying to find here? Okay, so we have an ice chest, also known as a cooler, right? Okay, so 24 inches across, 14 inches wide, 16 inches high, and then we have this model. All sides of the ice chest have an insulating layer that has a uniform width of X inches, and they tell us that the inner volume of the ice chest is 3,003 cubic inches. So we have to write a polynomial equation to represent the situation. So when they tell you what the inner volume is, okay, we're going to use that to help us write the polynomial equation. And then we're going to write and solve a system of equations. And then we're going to find the dimensions of inside that ice chest. And then the outside of the ice chest is the 24, the 14, the 16. And then they say they have the insulating layer that has a uniform width of X inches. So what I want you guys to think about is, if this whole length is 24, I want you to think about for a minute how you can represent this part. Okay, so the inside. And if you're feeling good, you want to write it down. Oh, no. Just the bottom part of it. Yeah. Okay. There usually is a little thing for the water. Okay, so
Kevin Lewis Collier to the main office, please. Has Kevin Lewis Collier to the main office. Also, at this time, all NHS volunteers and Frisbee players for the Ultimate Frisbee game can go to the Aux gym.
All right, so with this is 24. We know that each side is going to be X. Okay, so we're going to have to use for part A what we know about the volume. The volume of a rectangular prism is what? So it's the area of the base times the height. That's what you guys did last year, right? So what is the area of this base if it's a rectangle? Well, it's the length times the width, right? Yes. Yep, for the whole thing, it would be the 14 times the 16. So the area of the base in this case is your length times your width. So
again, all NHS volunteers and Frisbee players for the Ultimate Frisbee Assembly, please go to the Aux gym.
All right, and so what we're going to do is we are going to write an expression for each of those. So if the length is 24, but each of these are X, how could we rewrite this? No?
24 minus 2X.
Yes, 24 minus 2X. So you're subtracting X from each side, and what's X plus X? 2X. Okay, so not X squared, but the 2X. Okay, which means because this is your, right, this was your length, here's your width, this is your height. Okay, so if this is 14, again, you have X here and you have X here. So this is 14 minus 2X, and your height, this here is X, and you can't see it, but this is X, right? Because it's not going to stop. It's not going to not have an insulated layer at the bottom. We still have that. You have to insulate the bottom. Okay, so that's going to be 16 minus 2X. And that because you have the one here that you can see, but the insulated layer is all the way around.
It continues going up though, because we're not including the lid.
Yeah, you're right. You're not including the lid, but you have this insulated layer. You just can't see through this. So this part here is still insulated.
Yeah, I know.
And like this part here would still be insulated.
I'm talking about the top insulated layer.
What do you mean?
Like, why would it continue? Why would it? Like, we can see the top of the thing.
This is here. So see how this is labeled as 16? Yeah, so this part, then you have the X here, and then the X there that you can't
but
see.
I'm just saying, why can't we? Sorry. I don't understand why it's minus 2X.
Because you just think it's the X here.
No, I don't think it's that X. I think it's the bottom X, but not the top X.
Oh, it is gonna be the top. If you look here, see how the line is like right there?
Yeah.
So you're gonna have this top portion When you're talking about the lid, I thought you were talking about this.
No, but like
You guys can move along. You know how to foil, so stop being all huffy. We'll do it. That's what I'm gonna give you time to do next is to foil. Well, sometimes you don't have to do it.
like I understand this part, but I'm just why you have this extra the volume of it.
Okay, and then you guys can actually foil any two together. I would like to foil the two at the back first. Trying to find the inner part of it. So this whole thing is 16, but you're trying to find the part that it doesn't include. Okay, and then you can use your calculator for this. But really, once you get the 224, a lot of it you can do mentally. The negative 32 and the negative 28 going to be negative 60. And then negative 2 times negative 2. Come on, it's light work, as you say. Okay, and then we'll distribute the 24, and then we'll distribute the negative 2x. Okay, so we'll multiply 24 by everything. And then we'll multiply the 2x by everything, and then we'll add those together. Okay, so I'll give you time to do that, and then we'll check it together. I'm going to do that. Okay, and then this is still equal to your total volume. And then if you guys want to, you can put this in standard form. So your polynomial is the negative 8x cubed. You don't have to put this in standard form, but a lot of times when you're entering it into your calculator, you're going to want to. Okay, so this is going to be your polynomial equation that represents your situation. Okay, and that's going to be your total volume, the inner volume of the cooler. Okay, now for part B, it says write and solve a system of equations. So what we're going to do is we're going to use each side of these because it says a system. A system consists of at least 2 equations. So we're going to put one in y1 and one in y2. If they didn't ask you to write a system of equations, what I would have you do is I would just have you subtract this, and we would just find the zeros like we did on the front side. But this is another strategy that you can use. You can set up each side and put those in the y equals. And when you have two equations, the solution is going to be the what of the two equations? When you're graphing two equations, what do you look for? How do you find your solution? So yeah, where they intersect. So before we were finding the x-intercepts for these, because you have two equations, you're going to find the intersection.
Why can't we just
Just because it says write and solve a system of equations, otherwise that is what I would have you do. Okay, so we're going to graph and find the intersection. When you are graphing, we're going to use the zoom fit, which is 0. So if you hit the zoom button and then go to zoom fit, you're going to be able to see the two lines. The intersection is found by going to second, your trace button, and 5 is the intersect feature. All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to type those in for y1 and y2. You're going to graph by using your zoom fit. You can use the graphing calculator. If you don't have yours, maybe you can share with somebody so you can practice using those buttons. Make sure you got it. Okay, if you were to just graph it without using the zoom fit, you would only see part of one of your lines here. So that's why we have to go to zoom. And then, like I said, you can just press 0 or you can scroll down to zoom fit. And it should show you both lines. Okay, so once you have those, you're going to try to find where they meet each other. You can always adjust your window from here, like if you want to go to -50 to see what happens. Oops, I wanted to do that, not on that, but on my Y. 10, like if you wanted to see lower. Let me do it again. Oh yeah, that should matter. Okay, so then you can go to second calc, and then 5 is intersect, so we're going to try to get it right on there. And it asks you for the first curve, the second curve, and your guess, so you can press enter 3 times, and then it's going to give you a value for x and a value for y. So they tell you that x is 1.5, y is 3003. That's because that is a constant value. So your solution, the answer that we're going to use is our x value, because when you're finding your dimensions for your length, your width, and your height, you already have your equations, right? So for the length, you're doing 24 minus 2 times x. What are we going to plug in for x? I can help you with that. So when you're plugging these in, you're just plugging in 1.5 for x, right? So your width is 14 minus 2 times x, which is 1.5. And then the height is 16 minus 2x, 1.5.
You don't have to worry. That's the other thing.
What is 2 times 1.5? 3. So really, it's simpler to do this not punching it in your calculator. 24 minus 3, 21. 14 minus 3, 11. 16 minus 3, 13. So when you're writing your dimensions, remember these are in inches, so it's 21 inches by 11 inches by 13 inches. Okay, that's going to be your total. Okay, and then I put this note on here before I had to change things, so you're not going to have a factoring review. Okay, you only are doing 1 through 8.